Oh boy, Vancouver Canucks fans, this is what we have been waiting for. Is it? Because we have some breaking updates out of Nick Kypreos and Sportsnet.ca that indicate the future of the Vancouver Canucks may be changing soon. I'm gonna leave a link in the description to this article posted on Sportsnet this morning. Real Kippers NHL Buzz. Potential front office changes to watch. This is, as self-explanatorily as it gets, an article talking about some of the newest pieces of info around the NHL. Vegas brought in John Tortorella. Mark Stone's health is going to be an issue. There are a number of other teams that want to change out on things, but hey, lots of teams are going to be uncertain over here. Let's take a look at each of the teams that may be in the face of change soon. There's a conversation about Toronto. There's a discussion about the New Jersey Devils. And then there is an update on Vancouver. With the Canucks, there are strong suggestions that change is coming, but to what extent remains unclear. Until there is a better understanding of Jim Rutherford's full commitment to a rebuild, things remain fluid. Either way, I hear GM Patrik Allvin does not expect to survive past this season. My friends, does Patrik Allvin get the boot this summer? We shall see. Now, what I like about this article is there is a part immediately following the Patrik Allvin doesn't expect to survive past this season discourse, and there's a conversation on guys that could be in the mix instead. Now, I'm not necessarily going to say that Allvin should be replaced by any of these names, but we do have Brendan Shanahan, Peter Chiarelli, Marc Bergevin, and Brian Lawton as four people with executive experience who might have their sights set on a President of Hockey Operations title. President. Okay. Whether or not that is in a GM role or in a top-of-the-list President of Hockey Ops role, we shall see. We also want to keep an eye on Chris Pronger and Ryan Getzlaf, two others being discussed for front office jobs who don't have that same kind of executive experience. It doesn't appear that Nashville is moving in that direction, as they've made it known they want more NHL front office experience than what Getzlaf or Pronger can provide at this point. And then there are others that are still under contract, like Doug Armstrong and Ron Francis. Now, I'm not necessarily going to say that these guys are like the cream of the crop. You know, no disrespect to Shanahan, Chiarelli, Bergevin, Getzlaf, etc., but there might be some internal options for the Vancouver Canucks if they decide to go through the entire firing Allvin path. With that said, let's dive into some of the updates from Nick Kypreos as it pertains to Kypreos on Kipper and Bourne. Here's a tweet from Taj. Kipper said on the program earlier this morning on 590, Patrik Allvin, I think, has told a few people close to him that he does not expect to be back. Now that is a pretty interesting way to phrase it. Obviously, the article says it one way, Kypreos saying it on the radio another way, that Allvin does not expect to be returning as the GM of the Vancouver Canucks. Canucks Truther goes out there and asks, is this the first step in a soft Jim Rutherford exit? News came out of Toronto again. There's a reply. Kypreos threw out a scenario that if Allvin is gone, Jim Rutherford could step aside from running things day to day, maybe in more of an advisor role, and they bring someone else in to run the team. But then Kypreos added, no one has a sense yet which direction the Canucks are going in. Now, for what it's worth, when it comes to strictly Vancouver rumors and discussion, this is supposedly what is going on over here. This is a tweet made by Ryan Henderson. It's the same Nick Kypreos update. Taj replied saying, yeah, this matches some of the latest talk on the streets of Vancouver. Allvin and Foote gone. JR probably stays and hires his successor before leaving in the next year or so. The wild card is Jim Rutherford could change his mind and leave as well. So this could look like a potential plan. Who really knows if there is some sort of a coaching change alongside the GM change. There are folks on our Canucks discussing this as well. Let's dive into some of their ideas. I'm probably more glass half full on Allvin than most, and I think his robust amateur scouting background would be valuable through a rebuild. That said, there's got to be changes if you want to sell hope to the fans. My guess is Ryan Johnson is the next GM, and he brings Manny Malhotra in as his head coach. Gives you an AHL GM and NHL assistant GM specializing in player development. I also think that's a pretty easy sell to fans because you can point to Abbotsford's championship and position RJ and Manny as the guys who will develop that next core of Canucks players through this rebuild. Rutherford stays on for a year, but then they start the search for a new president of hockey operations. I'd love to see Lawrence Gilman back. I think this is exactly what happens. Allvin and Foote have to go. Rutherford gets a graceful exit by staying on in a transitionary capacity. By the end of next year, the entire face of the front office and the coaching staff would be gone. Now, this is a pretty reasonable way to formulate your decisions for the next Canucks group of management people. You can sell the idea of Abbotsford's championship. That is a realistic angle, and there probably would be a number of people that would agree with the hiring of Manny Malhotra in a main Vancouver Canucks head coaching role. Not directly related to this article, but in an interview a couple of days ago, Jim Rutherford had some pretty harsh comments on the team's coaching, calling out the lack of sticking with systems, the attention to detail, and having shifts too long. If Allvin is replaced, I wouldn't be surprised if a new coach comes with him. You wouldn't want another lame duck GM bringing in a coach like we saw with the Boudreau debacle. I'm not convinced that Allvin is getting the axe would mean much if Rutherford is still here. Jimmy's been calling the shots since the beginning, right? So he's just the fall guy. Yeah, but then again, thing is, Jim Rutherford is very, very old, and that is not a slight on him. I think it is very great that Rutherford has been able to get up to 77 years old. But he's 77 in one of the most demanding markets in the NHL, playing for one of the softest teams media-wise, and they're going through the beginning stages of a rebuild. So Jim Rutherford, I'd say he has no reason to go out there and try to stick it out with the Vancouver Canucks. Now, with that said, we do have ourselves some other updates with Vancouver, and don't even get me started on the conversations about Vancouver and their media these days. Rick Dhaliwal was speaking about this on Donnie and Dolly, that this regime of the Canucks is the most thin-skinned regime in the history of Vancouver. It's not even close. They have way thinner skin than the Benning regime. I've been yelled at more by this regime than the Benning regime. These guys, you can't say anything negative, or the next thing, you've got one of their PR guys breathing down your neck. And in regards to that, of course, they're all referring to the Trevor Beggs situation from last week. Schaefer is reporting that there's a meeting today between Daily Hive and the Canucks. So, obviously, Vancouver, they're going to have to make sure that this team is being put on blast. The Canucks themselves are going to say what they want to say. They don't want their reporters going out there and writing bad articles about the owner of the team, because real journalism isn't really real anymore. With that said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about all these updates from Nick Kypreos going out there and articulating the scenario, what could happen for Vancouver. Allvin potentially thinking already to himself and expressing to people around him he does not expect to be brought back. He expects to be fired. He expects to get the can. And the Vancouver Canucks might have to go through another situation where they're hiring a GM or a coach again. Who knows? Who steps in? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.